all of us are yearning for a return to normal, and we will do whatever we can to create an environment that is safe for our students, faculty, and staff. We appreciate the 100+ questions posed and have used them to help us frame a helpful and informative town hall. There are many who have asked the same question. To cover as much information as possible, we will address previously submitted questions in the following categories: our decision-making process and plan, academics, financial concerns, commencement, athletics, activities and clubs, and residence halls. The breadth of our answers is intended to cover your questions and concerns. Please know that as time allows, we will also answer additional different questions posed by the audience at the end of our town hall. Thank you in advance for listening to the questions posed prior to submitting your additional questions. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our president, Christopher Fiorentino.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. First, I do want to say that we understand that everybody's just tired of this. We're all tired of it, and it's important to realize, to contemplate the fact that we take no joy in having to operate in this mode. Our desire is to get back to normal as fast as we can, and we're every bit as disappointed as all of you that we have to continue on in the mode that we've been operating in up to this point. I'm going to address a series of the issues that have been raised, and hopefully we're going to be responsive to your questions. To start off, the first question: why so early? Well, while it might seem that our decision for spring was made early, when we made it on October 7th, it's not really early in our planning cycles. Scheduling for the spring semester starts around that time in October, so that's about the time frame for our planning. Now, additional issues that we looked at as far as making that call when we did, the circumstances that caused us to make the call that we made in the fall are really still in place. There's nothing significant that has changed in terms of the ability to fight the virus or any other factors changing that would have caused us to have optimism that it's going to be different. I will remind all of you that there were many schools, including Temple and Philadelphia, that went ahead and tried to open in the fall semester, and they quickly reversed course because the virus started to ramp up quickly. The circumstances that caused that to happen haven't really gone away. So that is really a key factor. I think that the thing that maybe people don't understand that is extremely critical is the whole notion of social distancing. We are required to socially distance. The governor has established requirements within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And for example, in order to meet the distancing requirements in classrooms, we're operating at, I'd say, roughly 36% or so. A class that normally would have 25, we can only put 9 in. We run about 3,500 classes a semester. And for us to try to accommodate those kinds of class sizes is simply an impossibility. It's physically impossible for us to do that, for us to operate in that mode. So really, we're of course very focused on keeping the community safe. We have over 1,900 employees. Of course, there's been a lot of talk about how the virus is not severely impacting young people, but that's not the case for many of the people in our group of employees. So we have to take that into consideration. But I will say this, that obviously a big question that comes up is what might cause us to change. And frankly, if the social distancing requirements went away, we would be moving quickly towards figuring out how to get back to normal. But under social distancing, the physical constraints, the logistics of trying to operate a university are extremely difficult. And frankly, I encourage you to take a look at schools that claim to be operating face-to-face and how they're adapting to this. No one is operating a university or college under normal circumstances right now. So again, we made the call when we did because that was what was required for our planning time horizon. And we will adapt to circumstances as we become aware of them. But we need to let the faculty know, we needed to let the students know, get their schedules up and running, get the faculty prepared for the spring semester, and that was the time frame that we had to do it within. Second question is who decides? Well, ultimately, a decision such as this is the responsibility of the president. I didn't make that decision in a vacuum by any means. You see the cabinet also on this panel. The cabinet is my key decision-making group. But beyond the cabinet, we have a group, we have a COVID-19 response group that has expertise from all the relevant areas. Going beyond that, there's the Centers for Disease Control, there's the Chester County Health Department, there's the Pennsylvania Department of Health, there's the governor's office, the chancellor's office of the state system. We're in regular contact with all these various organizations, health organizations, administrative organizations, trying to get the latest information that we have available to us. But again, at this point, this is really coming down to the requirement to social distance. That's what's causing the main constraint for us. We don't feel at this point, and I'll say more about this shortly, but we don't feel at this point that we're in a position to operate effectively with social distancing, and we're also concerned about issues around safety. Now, speaking of testing, contact tracing, and masks, another area of questions. A question with recent updates on rapid tests for universities, will I reconsider the decision to continue remote instruction? Well, there are a number of important factors associated with testing that you have to be aware of. Number one, the availability and expense of testing. There are schools that are testing aggressively. If schools are doing that, they have access to a lot more money than we do because testing is extremely expensive. And frankly, our ability to acquire tests has been very limited over the course of this semester and during the summer. In most cases, we've been instructed not to do testing, letting the test move towards areas where the requirements are more significant, nursing homes and so forth. At this point, we have about 300 tests on hand. That's all we've been able to get. And frankly, in a university population of 17,700, that's not going to get us very far. But there are other factors that are also very important. As a public university, we are not permitted to require testing of asymptomatic individuals, students. We can't. It's an invasion of their privacy. So if, for example, we wanted to have students back on campus, we could not require them, if they're asymptomatic, to have a negative COVID test before they came back to campus. That obviously puts us in a very difficult position. It's also important to understand that on a campus such as Westchester with 17,700 students, under normal circumstances, we have slightly more than 5,100 beds, residence hall beds on the campus. And with the student population as large as ours, obviously we have a significant number of students who commute to the campus and also a significant number of students who live in off-campus housing, apartments around the perimeter of the campus. We don't have any jurisdiction over the students who are living in these off-campus facilities. And frankly, this is where a lot of the issues have started to arise in terms of cases starting to appear. We've had over the past month or so in the borough of Westchester some run up in cases, and it's been concentrated in the 18 to 22-year-old age bracket in the rental community within the borough. As far as this applies to testing, even if we were in a position to test students when they came to campus, we're not in a position to prevent them from leaving the campus. And what we have observed is that, and this is not unique to Westchester by any means, this is happening on college campuses all over the country, what we're seeing is behaviors in the off-campus areas where the university does not have jurisdiction that are causing cases to ramp up. And a student who has a negative COVID test and then goes to a party and then comes back to campus is no longer somebody we can be confident is not infected by the virus. And so that puts us again in a very difficult position. And we're simply not in a position to continue to test over and over again and try to control the spread of the virus in that general community. Okay. There's a question about random testing, and I've really already answered that. We simply don't have the authority to impose testing on people who don't choose to do it. What is the plan? That's another one of the questions that I received. Well, as of now, we're returning in the spring under remote circumstances. We do have a limited number of students who are attending classes on campus. This is on really an as-needed basis if there are courses that simply can't be conducted remotely. As far as the plan for reopening, again, it comes down to the social distancing requirements. I can tell you that as we approach this semester, if circumstances were to change relative to a vaccine or to various types of therapeutics that would cure the disease, and we found ourselves in a different situation where the governor perhaps relaxes or eliminates the social distancing requirements, that would put us in a very different position. And we would be looking very hard at how we can get back to normal. Even that would not be simple. Obviously, as I was just describing, we have many students who would live on campus. We have many students who commute from various distances. And as we get closer and closer, it gets tougher for people to shift. And if we were to try to shift from the remote delivery to face-to-face, that's going to cause logistical problems. So frankly, even if we were able to do that, we would anticipate that we would have to continue to engage in the remote delivery of classes because it simply would be impossible for everybody to get back to Westchester. That's our assessment. As far as the plan for the fall, we're obviously very hopeful that circumstances are going to change before the fall, but at the risk of sounding redundant, if we find ourselves in a situation where the circumstances have changed and social distancing is no longer required, then we would be able to return to normal operation in the fall semester. All right, with that, I'll stop and I'll pass on the baton to Dr. Jeff Osgood, who's going to talk about some of the issues around academics.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us for the student town hall. I just want to reiterate what the president said. I've spent over 13 years at this institution, and one of the things that I've enjoyed most is being in front of a class with a group of students discussing the topics and the content that we were covering for the day. And I can tell you that both Lori and myself, as the team that makes up the chief academic leadership, that we did not welcome this decision, but we felt it was in the best interest of not only our 17,700 students, but the 2,000 faculty and staff who come to work every day and dedicate their lives to your educational experiences and their families and their loved ones as well. So we take the entire campus community's safety into consideration as we made this decision. I know that for many of you, class delivery is a topic that is of most importance to you. Questions we've received about the balance of synchronous and asynchronous instruction, the load or the amount of work it appears to or students are feeling. But I want to let you on a couple data points that I think are really important. One is we're actually asking students regularly, how are things going? What can we do better? We recently sent out a survey to all 14,400 undergraduate students. And we had a really surprising but encouraging number of replies. And those students were telling us that they are struggling with some of the management required to engage in remote learning. But over 62% of our students were indicating that they were doing well or extremely well. And so for a total of over 80% of our students were saying they were ranging anywhere from fine managing the shift between synchronous and asynchronous instruction, that it was fine or no issues, to those who said they were doing exceedingly well. So we've asked our students how they were doing, and they have responded. And those students who said they weren't doing well, we are actually putting them in touch with our student success coordinator, our Dowdy Multicultural Center staff. We are doing everything possible to connect you with the student support structures we put in place to manage this time when instruction is not looking like the thing that Westchester is known for in the quality and excellence. There were a lot of questions around holding faculty accountable for the way in which they were conducting their classes. And I want to take a moment to read to you a couple of lines from a letter that was actually sent out from the faculty leadership to their fellow faculty members, to their colleagues. And they said that recognizing that the changes to the fall 2020 course meeting patterns occurred after students enrolled, we urge you to consider the impact that having to adjust to new learning modalities can have on students' ability to stay organized with the courses, with other courses, as well as their busy lives. And one of the most helpful things we can offer our students is to establish and maintain clear and consistent patterns of communication. And they urge their colleagues to establish and articulate clear and consistent due dates for assignments, the exchange of meetings and advising appointments, and just helping students feel as if they're continuing to maintain a strong and meaningful connection, not only with the faculty members who are teaching their courses, but also their advisors who will help them navigate the registration process. So when we're asked how are faculty navigating this or being held accountable, I want to say first, it's starting with the faculty themselves. They are imploring their colleagues to not only communicate, but over-communicate, and they recognize the way in which this shift in instruction is having an impact on their students. They are asking their colleagues to think about ways in which they should reduce group work during this time because of the amount of difficulty it is to really schedule that during this period. We learned a lot of lessons from scheduling the fall semester as it relates to clearly communicating the amount of asynchronous and synchronous instruction that would be in every course. We are currently working through the spring schedule, so there's greater clarity and transparency for all students. And the information will be available. To the president's earlier point, why did we make this decision so early? Well, we made it in advance of the spring registration process, because one of the things that we found was burdensome and difficult to navigate for students was they enrolled for the fall semester, believing that it would be a fully face-to-face endeavor, and then we had students go back and re-register. And so we thought we were making the most responsible decision and the most student-centered decision by planning for remote instruction for the spring, having students register once. And as the president said, if things were to develop and change, then of course we could reconsider our decision. But at the time, all of the evidence and our abilities and the availability of testing supplies gives us a strong indication that we would be providing instruction remotely, as we are doing now in the fall semester. And so the most student-centered, student success approach we could take was to go ahead and register for the spring semester, which students are engaged in right now, and they would select these remote options. More additional information will be available to students in my WCU, so they can go back and review this additional information that faculty provided. But I think it's critically important for you all to understand that we were aligning this with the registration process. There are questions about how can students provide anonymous feedback related to either the communication or lack of communication from their faculty members. Again, we strongly encourage you to work directly with each faculty member first. The vast majority, if not all of them, are very committed to our student success during this. And so we always strongly encourage you to start with the faculty. But if you can't maintain or establish the connection that you're looking for during the semester, then we encourage you to go to your dean. And then you can also email us, and both Lori and myself, in the Office of Academic Affairs, the Division of Academic Affairs at Provost, PROVOST at WCUPA.edu. Lori and I will then handle those complaints and feedback internally. Your confidentiality will be maintained, and you can be assured of a response if you provide us with an email to respond to. So one of the things that's really important is, I think each of our students, with 17,700 students on campus, students are going through an evolution of perspective, an evolution of desire in terms of what kind of instruction they want to receive. We know that in the beginning, many students were expecting, if they were signed up originally for a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class from 8 to 8:50, that they would be in front of a Zoom, much like the one we're on now from 8 to 8:50. But everything we know, even in the K through 12 school districts, is that kind of interaction doesn't support student success. So faculty were constantly updating and modifying the way in which they were providing instruction. Recently, we heard from a number of students that actually some of the best instruction they were receiving is asynchronous instruction, meaning they were watching a lecture that a professor had videotaped in advance, and then they were engaging throughout the week with their faculty member, either through a D2L chat board or some other type of communication. And as the semester has progressed, we've even heard more calls from students for asynchronous instruction because it allows them to more successfully balance the competing demands, not only of the amount of time they have to focus on schoolwork, but also their home lives, whether that be working outside or caring for loved ones. And so while our faculty are very much committed, they ask us all the time for guarantees that the COVID-19 pandemic will not fundamentally change the way we offer education here, meaning they want to hear assurances from us, just like they want to hear that you want to hear from us, that we are not going to a remote or online learning environment as a permanent way of doing business. And we tell them all the time that that's not what we're doing. They are thinking about ways in which to make this experience more manageable for you. And we'll be sharing this letter that I wrote, that I read out loud to you with everyone else. I mean, with all of you, through the students. In terms of labs, we're actively working with all of our deans who have laboratories such as the Natural and Social Sciences, the College of Health Sciences, to better identify for the spring increased opportunities for in-person labs. We are very concerned about an entire generation of senior chemists, senior physicists, senior biologists, senior exercise sports scientists leaving this institution without those senior level experiences. And we are working to expand those, and those will be updated in the course schedule so students can effectively identify which of those opportunities will be available to them. But yes, we are working to allow for in-person labs, especially those students who need it for graduation and will not have the time to make up for those experiences. Again, our tutoring is at an all-time high. We're offering tutoring services effectively through Zoom interaction like the one we're doing now. We're not exactly like the one we're doing now, but like the ones you experience in your classroom. And so while there have been some requests to allow for in-person tutoring with proper face masks, as the president has indicated, the facilities required to pull that off are just not existent here at Westchester University because of the amount of distancing in terms of feet and air filtration and purification. So those things are not allowing us to do that, but we are successfully seeing tutoring occurring through the Zoom medium. There's been a lot of discussion and feedback from students related to the grading policy. As you all know, we put in a grading policy during the spring semester that was called the alternative grading policy. In the end, the vast majority of students didn't take advantage of it because they did not only fairly well, but they did actually better than they had the spring semester. We did a full analysis of the way the awarding of grades from this past spring to see if there was a meaningful difference, maybe a change in terms of lower grades. And in fact, that's not at all what we're seeing. Recently, the faculty have passed a fall 2020 grading policy, which would convert all F grades earned for undergraduate students, all F grades earned during this semester would convert to no credit or NC for those of you who are here during the spring. And these Fs will not impact a student GPA. And additionally, courses originally scheduled to take during this academic year can be repeated once without counting towards the maximum number of allowed career repeats. I understand that many of the students, like yourselves, would want to see a return to the COVID-19 grading policy from the spring. We strongly encourage you to work through your Student Government Association. That leadership is seeking to have additional conversations with the Faculty Curriculum Committee, which oversees making recommendations related to the grading policy to the Provost and President. Those conversations are ongoing, but as of now, all F grades will be converted to no credit and will not have an impact on students' GPA, and there will be relief from the course repeat policy limits during the 2021 academic year. For graduate students, the grading policy as it exists normally will continue to be in place, but graduate students may petition to request a continuation of their program if they've earned an F during this 2021 academic year. Students will not have to take any action for the grading policy like they did during the spring semester in terms of selecting. These will automatically be applied to the entire 2021 academic year. If you find that you would like a different type of grading policy, we strongly encourage you to meet with your SGA representatives. They are your elected representatives here on campus. That leadership team will then approach the faculty leadership team and engage in a discussion. There's been additional questions around deferring. So can a first-year student who enrolled this fall opt out of the spring semester and continue the second term in the fall? The answer is yes. We'll be announcing on the COVID-19 website a form that you can fill out. So you can let us know about your plans and we can and adjust your schedule accordingly. Though I would strongly remind you that the financial aid package that we were able to provide you this academic year is based on the result, or based on the finances and resources we have this year, so we cannot guarantee those financial aid resources next year. But yes, a student can opt out of the spring semester and continue the second term in the fall. So I'd like to remind students that we've made the same commitment that we did to you in the fall for the spring, which is if you take fewer than 18 credits but more than 12 credits, you can bank those additional credits for the summer term. So if you banked any credits from the fall, you'll be able to use those in the winter or winter or summer. And then if you bank any credits in the spring, you'll be able to use those for the summer. So we would strongly encourage you to think about your course scheduling and your course load in that context. Perhaps you take 4 courses versus dropping out entirely, and then you enroll in those free credits that we're providing for you in the spring. And so just to reiterate, so we've got many questions around, will we continue to bank those credits? And the answer is absolutely yes through the spring semester. They need to be used by the end of the summer 2021 sessions, but we're continuing to make that. Lori Bernowski will talk a little bit more about the overall impact, but we are seeing a doubling of enrollment in the winter session, which is telling you that students are taking advantage of this. And these are real dollars, real investment by the university because we still have to pay the faculty the additional salary that's associated with the winter teaching. And so we hope that our continued commitment to allowing students to take a reduced number of courses during the fall and spring, but pick up additional courses in the winter and summer will not only allow them to keep on track by having 30 credits completed by the end of the summer, but it demonstrates our commitment to your student success. And so I just want to say that we are all committed to doing everything we can to support you during the fall and spring semesters, as we always are. And I know that this faculty want to hear from you. We want to hear your feedback. So any of the feedback you can provide your faculty directly to us. They are working tirelessly as you are to be successful. They are working tirelessly to provide you an education in the safest way possible. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over.
Thank you, Jeff. Let's move it to Lori. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. And as Jeff mentioned, so some of what I'm going to talk about does touch a little bit on the piece around bank credits, but I'm really going to focus on 2 main areas of financial questions that we've received. The first area is tuition and fees, and the second area is enrollment. So in terms of tuition and fees, the first question we have, it's a very good question. Why are students still required to pay out-of-state tuition if they aren't required to be in the state for classes? You know, we understand that can be very confusing. So just to give you a framework, Westchester University receives an appropriation from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that's meant to offset the cost of tuition for Pennsylvania residents. So the modality of the course delivery, which in this case would be remote, isn't the driver of the tuition differential. It's really the permanent residency status of the student. So that structure is kind of at the heart of that. But having said that, obviously we are keenly aware of the financial challenges that our students are facing, both in-state and out-of-state students, as a result of the pandemic. So for that reason, we are providing additional financial support for all of our students. We did it in the fall, we're doing it again coming up in the spring. For this academic year, we've already invested over $5 million in scholarships and grants to increase affordability and access. And as part of that, more than 1.1 million has already been dedicated for out-of-state students. And that's before we even take into account the reduced tuition and fees for out-of-state students that I'm going to talk about in the next question. So that gets at the in-state, out-of-state. The second question from a lot of people. Will tuition be reduced since facilities are not being used? Yes, we did that in the fall. We're doing that again in the spring. We've reduced our overall tuition and fees for everybody in state and out of state. We're providing a COVID-19 relief credit. And this is, as I said, in-state, out-of-state, full-time, part-time, everybody for the spring of 2021. We already did it, obviously, for the fall. And this will lower the total cost of tuition and fees. So on average, for a full-time in-state undergrad student, the total for tuition and fees for the spring 2021 session will be reduced from $5,235 to $4,666, which is a savings of about 11%. At the same time, for a full-time out-of-state undergrad student, and remember, out-of-state students do in fact pay a higher rate than in-state students, the total for tuition and fees will be reduced from $11,147 to $8,649, which is a savings of about 22%. So this same pattern, I mentioned undergrads there, but this same pattern will apply for grad students as well. I know there's a lot of numbers in there, but remember, all of this is right on the FAQ. So if you want to circle back later and look back at that, it's right in there, and you can see that we're really very, very committed to trying to do everything we can to offset the costs for our students, both in-state and out of state. We had another good question about enrollment. What's the enrollment impact been? The specific questions are, has enrollment declined since announcing virtual instruction? If so, by how much? How will this impact the university budget? All good questions. Couple things, maybe surprising. Headcount, which means the number of students, we actually have not seen a decline in headcount. Our headcount enrollment actually went up a little bit. The number of credits that students are taking, however, has decreased slightly, but we do think, of course, this is due to the banking of credits that Jeff mentioned earlier. Certainly students who typically would take 15, maybe they're going to take 12, and as we can clearly see from the data, they're planning on taking courses in the winter. So enrollment per se isn't the reason that we are facing budget challenges, but we are like everybody else. We are facing budget challenges. And the challenge is really coming because we've dedicated a lot of institutional resource to giving refunds and relief credits in the face of this significantly reduced revenue. So we gave some housing refunds in the spring. Those of you who were involved with us then, you know that because we had to go remote. And of course, everybody's getting these COVID relief credits this semester. So in addition to those tuition and fee reductions I just mentioned, we're also waiving the distance education fee for all programs. So this results in additional savings for students who have typically pursued online degrees at Westchester. All in these adjustments so far, if we look at the fall and the spring, we're looking at about $25.5 million from the university for this academic year in terms of aid. We're trying to make sure that we aid and relief credits that we give to our students. So that's really, if you ask where the budget hit is, that's really where it is, not enrollment per se. And to Jeff's earlier point, interestingly, this notion of banking those extra credits and using them in the winter, this looks like it's going to be very, very helpful for our students because, as he just mentioned, our winter enrollments are about double where they would have been this time last year. So, we track this every year. Twice as many students are planning to do winter courses right now than we would have normally had. And remember, these for students who were in that banking of the free credits, there's no cost to the student, but obviously we still have to pay our faculty members who have to work and deliver those extra classes. So in addition to the $25.5 million I already mentioned, based on our current rates right now, looks like we're going to be investing just over $3 million additional dollars in that winter session to ensure our students' continued success by funding these free or these banked winter courses. So with that, let me turn it back over to John.
Thank you, Lori. I'm going to talk a little bit about commencement and where we are with that. Obviously, Westchester University wishes to give all of our graduates a traditional purple and gold ceremony. We want to really try to be able to celebrate the many successes that our students have had in a safe way for all to enjoy. Earlier this semester, we did put out a survey to our May 2020 grads, and overwhelmingly, they were asking us for in-person ceremonies, and they still wanted to be able to bring up to 6 guests with them. I think a lot of this has to do with we still to this day have many first generation students where this is a significant milestone for them and their families. So that said, we are encouraged by the governor's update in terms of guidelines for safe gatherings in Pennsylvania. Currently, he has put those limits on outdoor occupancy to between 15 and 20% of maximum capacity. Given those guidelines at Westchester, we'd be able to accommodate about 200 to 250 graduates for each formal commencement ceremony if we were to hold it in Farrell Stadium. So with that in mind, we are looking towards setting up programs in late March and April for our class of 20, spring class of 2020 graduates, and also for our December 2020 graduates, so that you'll have that opportunity to actually come to campus, be able to have your name stated as you walk across the stage and get that due respect that we certainly want you to have. It's just so important, and it'll give you a chance to be on the campus again. But we're encouraged by where the governor is right now, and we're hoping that will continue. So keep your eyes posted for updates on exact dates and times. We'll try to get those out early in the new year so that you have plenty of time to be thinking about where and what dates will be available for you as a graduate of 2020. Looking ahead to the class of 2021, or May graduates, our plan right now is to have those May graduations as planned. That we'll be working through the weekend right after our finals are done and try to put together intimate ceremonies, knowing that they're not going to be huge, but we're going to try to make them accessible and within the social limits or social gathering limits that are established by the governor as we go forward. So hopefully that gives people a better idea of where we're going with the commencement exercises. Another question that was asked in terms of commencement was the graduate application fee, which is the $99. In the spring, we gave a 50% reduction on that. We are going to do the same for our December graduates, knowing that we have to postpone your graduation until the spring term. But to try to make sure that you have some of the symbols of graduation in your hands in December, we are going to have your caps and gowns shipped directly to your address. And we'll also do the same with your diploma cover so that you'll be able to have some of those picture taking opportunities available to you. We do need to make sure that you understand that application fee does cover much more than just the actual ceremony. There are a number of other factors that go in with that. So if you are planning to graduate this December, we encourage you to go ahead and make your application so that we know that your cap and gown is ordered and we can get it out to you. So hopefully that will help. And that's about as close to normal as we think we're going to be able to get with the state of social distancing right now. So that said, I'll turn this over to Zeb Davenport. He's going to talk a little bit about things on the student affairs side.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Zeb Davenport. I'm the Vice President for Student Affairs here at Westchester University. And I also want to thank you all for joining us on this Zoom call. As my colleagues have already stated, we are in unprecedented times, and none of us on this call really want to be sitting in this situation without having you on our campus. We often talk about the fact that students are the life of this institution, and it's the last thing that we want to do is not have you on our campus and providing life at Westchester University. With that said, I'm going to address a couple of questions related to athletics, club sports, student activities, and clubs and organizations. And then I have a series of questions that I'd like to address regarding housing, and then finally some specific questions regarding our current first-year student population. So the first question is, if the PSAC decides on a spring sports season, will you allow the WCU athletes to play? So just so you know, we're getting guidance from our athletic conference, the PSAC, from the NC2A, and from an athletic committee on reconvening in-person activity. And this committee is chaired by the athletic director, and it has students, coaches, athletic administrators, health professionals, athletic trainers, faculty, and members of the Athletic Advisory Board. They're in the process now of taking a look and determining what it would take to have students have in-person activity in the spring. Once we get their recommendations, and based on all of the information from these groups, we will be in a better position to provide more detailed information. We also need to wait on the PSAC to decide what their spring sports activities will look like. So we are reconsidering that decision, or considering that decision, and those entities will help us make an informed decision about how we move forward. With regards to club sports, at this point, there will be no club sports for spring 2021. However, if there are any requests for exceptions, they should be petitioned to the Campus Recreation Center via your club sports executive board. And these petitions will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. All petitions will include guidance from your governing boards and your associations for each sport and the nature of the requests, such as practice only, competitions, tournaments, and so forth. But the ability for a club sport to participate in any type of activity will be as rigorous as we are looking as it relates to our varsity sports. And you would have to cover all of your COVID-related expenses. And again, those petitions will be reviewed by the club sports folks and the campus recs folks. Next question. What in-person activities or clubs will be available for students? And we all know that the pandemic has completely altered our normal way of life and how we like to engage with our students on campus. But our team in Student Affairs have been working very diligently to provide healthy ways to overcome the challenges of the current pandemic and discover new alternatives and creative solutions to keep our students engaged. In fact, the folks in Student Affairs actually reimagined over 100 major programs and services and providing those to provide those activities for our students in a remote environment. However, any in-person meeting must continue to follow the CDC considerations for social distancing and for large gatherings. All of our general meeting rooms, particularly in psychs, have been set for social distancing, and a limited number of people will be permitted in any given space. But we're also asking our clubs and organizations to provide a virtual option as well. And when possible, meetings should be held in the virtual environment. I would encourage you to read the updates on the FAQs for the student organizations and check out the Office of Student Leadership and Involvement's webpage for frequently asked questions as you begin your spring planning. And I want to address a few questions related to the residence halls. One, will the university reconsider on-campus living opportunities for spring, even if we're still in a virtual environment? We will continue to attempt to address the needs of many of our students. As we've stated in the past, the priority has to be given to our Promise Program students, students with proven hardship cases, academic placements, for instance, clinicals, student teaching internships, performance-based academic requirements and the like. But we are opening up our opportunities now. We're asking students who have compromised situations, whether they be home situations or your learning environment, let us know so we can work to accommodate your needs as well. We understand that students are struggling. We understand that there's some stress and some mental anguish that goes along with being in the remote environment. And if you're struggling in those ways, reach out to us and let us know. But you have to understand that we only have a limited number of beds available. And so if you have a need to be on campus, reach out to our folks in USH and traditional housing, and they will work to accommodate your needs as bids are available. The next question, will this year's freshman class be guaranteed residence hall accommodations for fall 2021 or the academic year 21-22? And the answer is yes. We're prepared to guarantee all currently enrolled first-year students housing for the fall 21-22 academic year if you complete the application, and you have to do that before February the 5th, all right? And this guarantee is based on, it's important to know this guarantee is based on the ability for us to open with double occupancy rooms. So we are prepared to guarantee you housing, but we have to be able to open with double occupancy rooms. And again, as the president mentioned, that's based on the requirement of social distancing. Who qualifies? The next question, who qualifies as a current first-year student that will be guaranteed to live on campus? To qualify as a current first-year student, the student must have been admitted for fall 2020 and currently taking classes at Westchester University. So if you stepped out, then you wouldn't be considered a current first-year student. Next question, will on-campus housing be available for other students in fall 2021? After we accommodate our current first-year students, priority will be given to those current sophomores with a previously completed application or lease agreement. Students must complete their housing intent form. So if you're currently living on campus and you're a sophomore, you have to complete your housing intent form by November 30th to be considered for housing on campus in the fall. Housing for upperclassmen is not, for upper class students, excuse me, housing for upper class students is not guaranteed, but any upper class student who would like to be on campus can still apply, and we will consider your application once we accommodate the needs for our current first year students and then our rising sophomores. The next question has to do with a refund for housing deposits for USH. The application fee paid to USH for affiliated housing remains non-refundable. If you paid $200, the non-refundable application fee, and did not live with us during the 2021 year, you will not be required to pay an additional $200 for the 21-22 academic year. Last two questions, and I think this is important to address, and I want folks to hear that we understand our current first year students have not been on campus and have not had an experience to be on campus. And we understand that being here and being able to be acclimated to this environment is important to your success. So this question says, can first year students have an experience with college life and living on campus, one to a room? And so we want you to know that we actually have a team of folks who are working on a spring experience for all of our current first year students who would like to take advantage of an experience with being on campus. A questionnaire with a number of different options will go out later this week so that we can identify the interest that students have with being on campus. Now, it's also important to know that any type of on-campus living experience right now is not a normal situation. We require that all students wear masks in all common spaces, in elevators, and even as you're outside walking through campus, we're requiring that you wear masks. Students who live on campus are only allowed to have one guest per room, and those guests that can visit have to be those individuals who live in your current residence halls. We're not permitting any outside guests, nor are we permitting any overnight guests. And my last question, will you conduct a summer orientation for the class of 2024 that has not had the chance to get acquainted with the university or the campus, or will it be for the 2025 only? And the question is yes. Our Office of New Student Programs, they're right now making plans for what they're calling round 2 orientation for our current class of 2024, because we know and understand you being here and being on campus, getting acquainted with our facilities is important, and we're working very diligently to make sure we can make that happen for all of our students who are current students. Thank you. Turn it back over to you, John.
See, we have a number of questions from folks that are watching online. Jeff, you said that you would take some of these academics. Would you go ahead and do that, please?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. So we have a question from a student that is referencing the extra free credits for winter and spring, and they're a senior who will be graduating. Well, a couple of things. We've made an investment that Dr. Bernowski talked about in terms of reduction in tuition and fees for both in-state and out-of-state students. The purpose of the free credits was to ensure that our students would still graduate on time. So for the student who asked this question, they're a senior who will be graduating. The fact is, well, congratulations that you will be graduating. You've navigated this. The good news for you is that your educational career at Westchester didn't start off in a pandemic. And so these credits are based on student success and getting them to graduate, getting them to 120 credits. And so while I understand that you are comparing yourself to other students who are getting these free credits, this is an investment in making sure that these students graduate on time. And we just want to congratulate you on graduating this spring. There's also questions related to will there be an increase in summer classes offered? Yes, in fact, much in the same way that we increased the winter class offerings in preparation for the anticipated increase in the number of students who want to take winter assessment courses, we're doing the same thing for the summer. Somebody asked a question that they were just placed in their last field class last week. They're saying 2 months late. Will there be a guarantee that all last semester education majors will be placed for student teaching on time? So I want to tell you the reasons why we were late in getting to your field placement is many of the school districts were not accepting assignments from universities for the student teaching or the field class. It wasn't until much later in the process that we were getting clearance to allow students to actually go into the school district. This is such a widespread issue, even beyond Westchester, that the state legislature, both the House and Senate, are taking up bills to modify what it is required to become a teacher in Pennsylvania if you were an education major during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we are placing students as fast as those placements become available, as soon as the school districts allow us. And the legislature has taken notice. And so I'm sorry that was 2 months late, but we are working with the school district. We cannot compel them to place our students, but we're doing everything we can. Will tutoring be available over the winters and summer sessions? And the answer is absolutely yes. We have 2 tutoring services. The first is we contract through Pearson Higher Education, which offers virtual online tutoring with an actual person. So much in the same way we're interacting right now over Zoom, 24/7, and students are encouraged to take available to it. It's a service that we provide. We are also looking at getting tutors available for classes that are being offered during the winter and summer sessions, and we'll have more updates on that. But Smart Thinking, our contracting of tutoring services with Pearson, our students are very satisfied with those experiences, will be available throughout the entire 12-month calendar year, whether it's winter, summer, or spring break. There were questions around how come music majors are allowed to have on-campus classes, but gen ed classes don't. So I will say that for the vast majority of our general education courses, they don't require the same type of in-person instruction the way that the music school or some of our health science courses have. So and to be even more transparent with you, in the Wells School of Music, there are a very limited number of students when compared to all of our other majors. And so actually, to be honest, the Wells School of Music, while it is a source of great pride for the institution, its total number of students and faculty is actually less than some of our academic departments and other colleges. So it was a very different type of manageable risk and manageable situation. And so when will we know if upper level labs will be in person? We are going through that process right now. We hope to have some information to you before students break for the Thanksgiving break. One of our strong desires and aspirations is to get as much of the spring registration process wrapped up before the Thanksgiving break, when the entire campus community shifts to remote instruction. John, I think those are the questions that I'm able to provide an answer to right now.
Thank you much, Jeff. Zeb, there are a couple student affairs things that I think you can handle for us.
Yeah, so let me go. There's a dining question about the discount. We actually gave students a 12% discount on dining because we knew that we would be ending our contracts on November. So that question is yes, we have already built that into your dining contract. I think there was a question, I'm trying to look for it now, about current students being offered, current first-year students who were accepted, will they be able to live on campus? The answer is yes, we are going to allow those students to be on campus as well. Did I miss?
I think those were the two new freshman students enroll that are going to be enrolling in 2021. Will they be
next year's freshmen, Zeb? That's what that was.
Yeah.
Oh, next year's freshmen?
Next year's
Yeah.
freshmen, right?
Yes, and so our priority is to address our current first year students, and then as availability as availability arises, we will do the same for our next year first year students. Did I clear it up, Chris?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Todd, we had a question about the status of the Science and Engineering and Commons building.
Sure. I'm Todd Murphy. I'm the Vice President of Finance and Administration. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen all the activity that's going on out at the Science and Engineering Center at the Commons. Our facilities team, our contractors have been working very diligently. As you know, we had to shut down for a period of time because of COVID. All the contractors had to remobilize, and I'm happy to say that we are moving quickly now. We anticipate that the building will be open in the spring. We will schedule to have classes in the fall of next year, but we are going to be transitioning a new food service in there. So we want to make sure that everything is up and functioning and making sure that when students do come back, that everything is very seamless for them. So the team has been doing a very good job. And if you're interested, on the facilities website, we have a camera that actually overshoots the building. You can see the construction progress on how things are going from the outside. And at some point, we're going to have a time lapse so students and faculty and staff can see the progression from when we just broke ground in the soil to where we are now. So all things are pointing to springtime to have the building operational, and then folks will actually be able to take a look at the inside and see all the great amenities that students are going to have, all the new technology that's going to be in the building. And I think it's going to be a really good thing for students when they're back here in the fall.
Thank you, Todd.
There's a question that asks why are first year students being put before upper level students when there are students who are in need of in-person instruction? And if that question is related to housing, I think it's important that folks understand when we're talking about housing for spring, we are considering academic placements as a priority. I don't know if that's related to that particular question, but we are one of the priorities deals with in-person instruction as we're talking about placing our students on campus for spring.
But the first year students who would be, if they were to live on campus in spring, would still be primarily taking classes that are being delivered remotely. It's not a conversion to face-to-face if they're living here.
Right, that's exactly right.
John, there's a question also here about why was there no funding as distributed by the Commonwealth around CARES Act used for the university to have any testing? And look, this gets back to the question that the president raised early on, and certainly our Zeb Davenport, our VP for Student Affairs, can weigh in since that area, the health center is under his area. This had far more to do with availability, just literally a complete lack of availability. Tests were being rationed in Chester County. I'm under the impression they still are. So this had a lot more to do with availability than the cost per se. As the president mentioned, it also happens to be expensive, but certainly when we got CARES Act funding, there was literally not an ability for us to even obtain tests, let alone, as the president said, have a mechanism where we could require it. We are literally unable to require testing from asymptomatic students. So I'll defer to the president and to Dr. Davenport if there's any other. I'm talking from the finance piece since that's where the question was directed, but I'll defer to my colleagues for any other additional notes.
So I would just say that following up on that, Lori, there's a related question. Zeb, I know you were about to say something, but it said, how are we planning for the future, or will we only start planning when social distancing guidelines are lifted? I think there are two major streams of information that we're constantly looking at. It's the availability of testing and the availability of a vaccine. And those things that we're always looking at. And if there are radical changes in the availability of testing supplies and or the availability of vaccine, we are talking about those things now, and we are planning for the impact of any of those potential realities for the fall. It is our sincere desire that we get back to the normal order of business by the fall. There's some there are multiple points of information on these items, but there is enough to be more hopeful than we've ever have about the fall, and that's what we're planning for. So,
Yeah, so just for clarification, and I guess to further explain the 2 points that my colleagues have addressed, we do have COVID testing through the health center, but as the president said, it is for those students who are symptomatic, and we only have 300. We ordered over well over 1,000 back in March, and they are just now getting us 300. And we do have the ability to do nasal swabs for students who are symptomatic, but we only have 10 of those of those tests. So, and it's not that we don't want to do testing, we just can't get it. It's a lot of competition out there for tests, and when we get them, we are deploying them to our students. And as we know, we have 1,600 students who are navigating our campus, and so we're using those tests to help us keep those students healthy and safe and allowing us to accommodate their needs.
I see a question about rent relief for spring. I'm assuming that relates to rent relief for housing in off-campus housing. And if that's the case, the off-campus housing is not affiliated with the university. We were able a while back to use some of the federal funding that we had received, the CARES funding, that was earmarked directly for students. We were able to use a sizable share of that to provide some relief. Somebody can jump in and tell me the number. I forget what the number was, but it was quite a bit of money. We don't have any more of that relief money available to us to do any more rent relief, but that was not university funding. We would not be in a position to utilize university funding to provide rent relief for apartments in the community. That came from the CARES funding that was sent to Westchester, and funding that was required to be dedicated to students. And we used a sizable amount for other students other than the ones living in the rental community. There were different regions that we funded. Could somebody do a quick summary of maybe what that array of things was?
So Chris, I'll just talk about the financial aid aspect. So we received over $6 million in CARES funding that was required to go directly to students. There was nothing off the top for the university. There was another pot of money that the university got. That $6 million has been already allocated to students except for a remaining $200,000, and we are working to allocate that for our extreme hardship cases. But the president approved our fall rent relief, which took 1,780 of the applications for rent relief and provided them with an $1,100 grant, which totaled almost $2 million. And so for those of you who are experiencing significant hardships, there are still some CARES Act funding available, but you should just be fully aware that we're down to the last $200,000, and we are saving those for the most significant and severe hardship cases available. We have no information or any guidance if we should expect additional relief dollars either from the Fed or from the state government. I think you would probably be best planning for that those dollars will not materialize. But if they do, we will work as quickly and diligently as we did to push out those funding that we did originally in the fall.
Okay, well, thank you all. Looks like we're at the end of our allotted time here for this afternoon's town hall. We want to thank everybody for tuning in. This program was recorded and will be available online through the Westchester University website, so you'll be able to check in with that. We also ask that you continue to look at the FAQs that are posted. We'll try to keep those that information updated with the most up-to-date information that we possibly can on each and every one of the kinds of questions that you've been asking. So we'll take a look at all the questions that were asked here today, and if there's some things that we didn't get to, we'll try to put those up in maybe some additional FAQs for everybody. Thanks again. We want you all to stay safe, stay well, and like you, we're hoping that we can get to some form of normal operations here sooner than later. And again, that will all be dictated on the information that we get from County Health and our advisors as we move forward. Thanks again and have a great day. Thanks for being with us.